successful coup on the continent since 2020. The military restored the constitution a week after the coup and appointed the coup leader Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba as interim president. Following the suspension of the West African nation by the African Union, a document captured under what the military classified as a fundamental act guarantees the independence of the judiciary and presumption of innocence, as well as basic liberties spelled out in the constitution, and as such freedom of movement and speech. Though the post-president Macabre, who was arrested by the army, has not made any public appearance, but the head of ECOWAS mission to Ouagadougou, Shirley Botchwe, assures that after meeting with the embattled president, is in a good spirit. Well, we don't know what's going on thereafter. However, many have raised concerns over the obvious resurgence of coup in Africa, with Mali experiencing 2 successful coups, Guinea, Sudan, and Chad also taken over by the military, and the reasons advanced for the dissolution of democratic structures in these countries by the army are quite always the same and very similar, from bad governance to rising insurgency and corruption, and this is of great concern. As the anti-government protests by citizens in these countries and even going into wild jubilations after the military seized power has become concerns. This indeed is a broad-raising situation, considering the significance of a democratic state which has inherent principles to safeguard and guarantee inclusion and political participation. There has been more coup in the past 2 years than there ever was in the last decade. The Burkina Faso military coup came barely 2 weeks after the Economic Community of West African States imposed state sanctions on Mali over an attempt to extend the transition period by 5 years, despite a commitment to hold elections in February 2022. The regional body, however, ordered the closure of land and air borders between ECOWAS countries and Mali, the suspension of all commercial and financial transactions, freezing of the assets of the country in ECOWAS central banks, its suspension from all financial assistance, among others. But this is not the first time the West African nation will be sanctioned by the regional body, as it was also isolated in 2012 over a military coup. What is the fate of Guinea-Bissau, Sudan, Chad, Mali, and now Burkina Faso in the face of the seeming defiance to regional sanctions by the army? What is the role of the international community in protecting democratic institutions? Is the coup essentially triggered by bad governance? What we on this program shall attempt to evaluate some of the reasons highlighted for the resurgence of coup in Africa, despite the interventions of regional bodies such as ECOWAS, AU, and of course the United States of America's apathy towards coup. Joining us from Lagos is Professor Akinterinwa, former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs and the President of the Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Prof is already online. Also with us from London is Reno Omokri, a former aide to ex-President Goodluck Jonathan, best-selling author and human rights activist. They're all here on this program to join us to take a look at what we'll be taking a look at on the show today. But before I bring in my guests, let's take this short break. I'll be back. Don't go away.
The resurgence of coup d'etat in West Africa raises the fear of an impending military rascality to truncate democracy in the sub-region, after a mutinous unrest in Chad and Niger. The militaries in Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso forcefully removed the democratically elected presidents, while the coup in Guinea-Bissau was botched. When in 1983, the military upstaged the democratic government in Nigeria, the reasons for the action were governance misrule and corruption. This was a chorus sang in all the military coups across West Africa. The leader of the coupists in Burkina Faso, Paul Henry Damiba, gave the same reason for the action, and ironically, that was the same reasons given by Thomas Sankara in 1983. Even with his revolutionary bout and what appeared to be his good intention, Sankara was assassinated by his close friend Blaise Campbell in another coup in 1987. Rwandan President Paul Kagame once said that coup is a consequence of failure of governance. Even as he failed to find any justification for a coup, he held the view that the political class called for it.
All right, thank you for taking the time to join us on the program. And the program is called Global Matters. We're taking a look at the resurgence of coup in Africa. But before I go to my guest, let me quickly give you this information. The U.S. President Joe Biden has advised all American citizens in Ukraine to immediately leave the country following the advice of his top diplomat that Russia may invade Ukraine any moment. We know that there are Nigerians in Ukraine, many of them in Ukraine. But the question is, what is the Nigerian government doing, or what steps are the Nigerian, the people in government in Nigeria are doing? Any proactive measure to protect Nigerians in the Eastern European nation? We don't know yet. But if America is seeing what we're not seeing and they're advising their citizens to leave Ukraine, I think it's our time the government of Nigeria made the move to protect Nigerians in Ukraine, either advising them to leave or finding a way to evacuate them from that country. All right, let me go to my guest now, and we come back to that later. Joining me from London is Reno Omokri, human rights activist and best-selling author, and also Professor Akinterinwa, who's joining from Lagos, DG Bolitak Center for International Studies. Prof, let me start with you. Great to see you again, Prof.
Always being with you.
Thank you, Prof. Quickly, I mean, you listened to my intro on the program, The Resurgence of Coups in Africa. The story has always been the same: corruption, poor management of the country, poverty. Why? We thought we've got over these. Why is Coup coming back again? We thought we have overcome
Let us begin with the coup in Ukraine on the basis of the advice given by Joe Biden.
Yeah.
A coup, as distinct from a coup d'etat, is always manifested in different forms. Now, Ukraine, even though it used to be part and parcel of Russia, now Ukraine is trying to assert its own sovereignty on the basis of the principle of self-determination, to determine whether or not to belong to the NATO school of thought or to belong to the Russian school. So in this case, now that the Americans are warning their own citizens, warning them that, look, they will not be in a position to protect their citizens when the D-Day or the D time, that is time of possible attack on either side will be, they will not be able to protect them. And you ask a very good question: what is it that the Nigerian government, the people of Nigeria, are doing in terms of the security and protection of their own citizens? The answer is simple. Nigeria has a foreign policy that is not programmatic. Our foreign policy at best is very reactive. We only react, but we never have an agenda. We never try to foresee situational crises like this that we have provided for precaution. So in this case, our compatriots in Ukraine, we need to pray for them. They either try to listen to the advice given by the Americans themselves, to consider the advice as being given by the people and government of Nigeria. That's what I would say at that level. Because what is happening, what is coup d'etat? Coup d'etat is forceful change of government. And when you are threatening to prepare for war, what will happen? You want to bring the government to its knees. And by the time the government is brought to its knees, what happens next? You play the tune and you dictate it. Now, as to the dynamics of the recurrence of coup in West Africa, in particular, and in Africa in general, the reasons are not far-fetched, but they can be summed up not by what Kagame just simply said, that it is failure of governance. No, we need to qualify that governance. It is failure of good governance. But when we now try to break the poor governance, bad governance in Africa into simple terms, you will discover that they are more interesting and the reasons vary from one country to the other. First observation, we can ask the question, why is it that all these coups are now Frenchified? Why are they holding in Francophone countries? Secondly, why are the reasons common? Why is it the same? Thirdly, why is it that the people in those countries are actively supporting such coups, while the regional body, the ECOWAS, is preaching the sermon, of non-constitutional change of government? But the people are now saying, no, please, don't tell us rubbish. This time, we want this coup. When we now try to find answers to these three questions, you will now discover that, look, why the coups will continue to come. We are not talking about what are taking place, but more coups are coming. Let me quickly give you an example. For instance, in Mali, the people were demonstrating for many days. There was the June 5 movement. It was when the demonstrations were reaching their crescendo, becoming chaotic. That was when the military came in. That was when Assimi Goita came in. But when the ECOWAS regional body, believing that, look, you cannot remove an elected government, and they came up with sanctionary measures against Mali, the people came back to the streets to now demonstrate in favor of the coup. The same is not different in Burkina Faso, for instance. They have been demonstrating, protesting, asking for Kabore's removal, complaining that, look, you are there, the people, villagers are regularly being killed by, jihadist terrorists. You couldn't do all those things. And they now say that, okay, look, if you will not be able to protect us against all this, then why should you be there? But rather than for Kabore to respond and look objectively at the complaints, what he did is to use the military against protesters. And now people now responded to say, okay, look, you, Mr. President, you should be removed. The way they compel IBK, Ibrahim Boubacar Imali, to resign, that was the same way they asked the Burkinabe president to sign, and he was removed. Now, when you begin to look at all this, why is it that in Mali, they asked the French people, government, to go away, the soldiers, the troops? The Malians say that they are not against the people of France per se, but that they are against the policies of the French government. So they are now saying that you French people, you have been in Mali since 2013. Now, rather than have a simplified solution to this insecurity, the problem was becoming complex.
All right, Prof. Prof, let me put you on hold because of our time. Prof. Yes, thank you.
In Nigeria, in Abuja, they protested against the French embassy, saying that France was aiding and abetting terrorism. This is the way they look at it in the Francophone world, and this is why we are having the recurrence of coup, or ending coup d'etat.
Okay, all right, that Prof, thanks a lot. That's will probably some of the external factor in coup in across the continent and in the region. Let me quickly go to Reno Omokri. Reno is a best-selling author, and he is also former A2S President Goodluck Jonathan. He's also a human rights activist. Reno is based, coming to us from London today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I mean, you've heard the contributions made by Prof. What would you say has brought back coup in West Africa?
Well, if you look at coups in West Africa, traditionally coups in West Africa have always started in the Francophone countries. So the first coup in West Africa started January 13th in Togo, January 13th, 1963, when Nasingbe Eyadema, he removed President Sylvanus Olympia. And now you see that Togo shares a border with Benin Republic. So you had January 13, 1963, there was a coup in Togo. And then 9 months later, October 28, 1963, there was a coup in Benin Republic, where Christophe Sodo removed President Hubert Magra. Now, if you look at it now, the next coup that happened in Nigeria, and Nigeria shares a border with Benin Republic, and that was the January 15, 1966 coup. So you can see that it has a contagious effect. It begins in the Francophone countries, and then it gradually spreads to the Anglophone countries. You see, and then the next coup that you had was in Ghana. So you can see all these countries, they share borders, they share borders together. So now, what we have to ask, and I'm so glad that Professor asked that question, why does it begin in the Francophone countries? You see, the reasons that are used for the coups, they say, okay, like corruption, maladministration. But if you look at the Francophone countries, they are not like the Anglophone countries. Like, for instance, in Nigeria, we have complete control over our monetary policies, over our currency. In the Francophone countries, they don't have that control. Their currency, CFA, is controlled by France. Completely, totally controlled by France. They have very little influence over their currency. So even their government, they have limitations on what they can do. And then if you now look at what's happening now in this resurgence of coup, because you're saying that there's a resurgence of coup in Africa. No, there's only a resurgence of coup in West Africa. It's not an African problem, it's a regional problem. It started in Mali, it's gone to Burkina Faso, Chad, you see it in. So it's coming from these Francophone countries. And so we need to be asking ourselves, why the Francophone countries? Perhaps the Francophone countries need to have more independence, I mean full independence, not just political independence, but also economic independence. Because if we don't help them to achieve that, what we might see is that just like it happened in the 60s, there might start to be contagious effects in other countries. And then also, we're seeing that there is region, in every region in Africa, and not just in Africa, all around the world, you should have a regional superpower. Now, in this case, Nigeria is meant to be the regional superpower. But we are seeing ineffective and weak leadership in Nigeria, and that is affecting the sub-region. I'll give you a very good example. In 2003, President Frederick
Reno, would you to state that there's a weak leadership and government in Nigeria? Some would not agree with you to actually classify the government as being weak. Those is a political season. Some would not agree with you, and I don't think that would be fair on the government to use such to go down that lane.
Well, it doesn't. You don't have to agree with me, but I mean, you have to agree with the facts. So if you look at what happened in 2003, when there was a coup in Sao Tome and Principe, where Frederick de Menezes, incidentally, he was visiting Abuja, President Obasanjo, when there was a coup. I think it was done by Colonel Fernando Pereira. Now, if you look at what President Obasanjo did then, I don't know if you recall, President Obasanjo called Colonel Pereira and told him, listen, he used a carrot and stick approach. He said, you have done this thing, we will not tolerate a military coup in West Africa. So, encouraging you, return power back to the elected president, de Menezes. But if you don't, here's what's going to happen. I will come there and I will physically remove you. And then if you recall, President Obasanjo sent Nigerian Alpha jets and they were hovering around the presidential palace. And then eventually there were negotiations, and then the coupists, they surrendered power, and then President Obasanjo got on a plane with President de Menezes and took him back to his country and reinstalled him. So that is regional leadership. So when you say that you might disagree with me, look, we have very, very weak and ineffective leadership in Nigeria. Look at what's happening. If Nigeria cannot, look, right now we have in a place like Zamfara, we have bandits that have surface-to-air missiles. The president of Nigeria could not even go to Zamfara. He came up with a shoddy excuse of bad weather. So when you are seeing the regional superpower displaying weakness, then it's like a dog. A dog, for instance, a dog will never attack a person when the person shows confidence. But because when you show weakness, your body produces hormones, and dogs can smell those hormones. And so when they see weakness, it's like, for instance, we talked about Ukraine. A lot of people have said that what is happening in Ukraine is because Putin has sensed weakness in America. And that weakness is emboldening him. And that's why Ronald Reagan said in his Reagan Doctrine in 1985 that the only way you can have peace is through strength. So when you have a regional superpower that is weak and showing ineffective leadership, I mean, look, we have to
Reno, I am not the one.
Today, we have a leader who is an intellectually weak and weakling. And that is, you see all these leaders in all these places, all these polar countries, they are saying, okay, I mean, if we have a figure like Obasanjo there, he can do something, but what can this one do? And it's emboldening them. So that is
Reno,
what I mean,
because of my time, because of my time,
it's emboldening these coupists.
Because of my time, I'm not saying I'm the one disagreeing with you. I say many will not agree with you on some of those things, the qualifications you're getting to the president, on the basis that Nigeria has its own problems it's dealing with money, economic problem, it's dealing with insurgency in the country. It cannot leave his own problem to start attending to regional problems. So would you consider, that's why I say some will not agree with you, as a weakness on the part of the president, because he's got his own problems too?
Can I respond to that?
Yes, in 1 minute.
Okay, so in a country like Nigeria, what you have to understand is that if you are not taking care of all these crises that are occurring in other countries, it's going to affect your country. So you can see that when there were coups in the Mano River region, you have to understand that coups don't just come alone. If you look at history, and you have to remember that the best predictor of future events is past events. When coups happen, within a space of 5 years, civil wars also happen. So coups, they don't just come in isolation. After about 5 years, you're going to see civil wars. And those civil wars is going to lead to a displacement of populations.
All right.
And then those displacement of population, they will start coming to other countries that share borders with these countries. And then it's going to cause tensions in those countries. So if you say that Nigeria has our own economic problems, Nigeria has our own political problems, these our economic and political problems will be multiplied by a factor of 3 if we do not do something in these our neighboring nations that are facing crises. And we've seen that with history. That's why Nigeria sent what we call the ECOMOG troops to the Mano River region. That's why we were able to stop the war in Sierra Leone and Liberia. President Obasanjo, again, he did that. He brought President Chancellor and put him in
because of my time.
So we need to look at this from the historical perspective, because coups, they don't just happen in isolation. After some time, civil wars happen. All
right, thank you so much, Reno. If I allow you to keep talking, I'm not going to leave this place. Prof, in 1 minute, what is the way forward for West Africa and indeed for Nigeria? There appears to be some kind of palpitating tensions in the country. People are not sure. Even the Nigerian government is not sure of its stance. There was a time it was talking about coup in the country. What is the way forward? In 50 seconds, Prof.
Well, in 50 seconds, you and Reno are correct. He talked about facts, but there are many versions of the fact. But since there is no time, the way forward is for the regional body, which is operating on the basis of the principle of subsidiarity, to learn to put greater emphasis on the interests of the people and not the government. The ECOWAS is existing not because of protection of elected presidents, but their interest should be on the interest of the people.
All right, Prof, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program. I'm so sorry I may not be able to go beyond. But Reno, next week, 19 15 is the anniversary of Leah Sharibu. I know you and others have been at the forefront of promoting release. We'll be glad to have you come back next week, and let's talk about Leah Sharibu and the way forward for this poor girl who has been in captivity. Maybe this is another failure or a coup summer at some point, but that will be next week. Hopefully you'll be available so that I'll be able to look at these things.
Well, I'll be available, but permit me if you can give me 50 seconds.
I'm out of time. I'm out of time. I'm afraid I'm not.
50 seconds, please.
Okay.
50 seconds.
Wow.
Well, ECOWAS cannot be looking after the interests of the people. ECOWAS has to look after the interests of democracy. Now, when you have a democratically elected government, it doesn't matter whether, look, these people, they can sponsor people to come and do protests. They can sponsor people to come. We've seen it. Why do you think that Senegal is the only country in West Africa where there has never been a coup? The reason being that
I'm afraid
Senegal,
this is how far I'm going to have to stop you here. Reno, I'm so sorry. I may have to stop you here because of. I'm afraid I have to stop you here, Reno, because of. I wish I can just allow you to. I wish I can just allow you to continue to talk with great pleasure, but I have to talk because news is coming up right after this program. Thank you so much. This is how far I can go on the show today. Next week is another day. I'm sure Reno is going to have the time to join us as we look at the issue of Leah Sharibu, our 4th anniversary. My name is Tunde Alabi. Stay out of trouble. I will pray there will never be any coup in this country. Bye.